Good evening to everyone who's here at the library and those who are watching from home. Just want to say welcome to the first in-person and hybrid, actually, and virtual program that we've had, I think, since the fall of 2019. It's the first time we've been in person. So there are several brave souls here at the library who came out, and I know there's going to be some people watching, and I'm really happy to be able to introduce this. My name is Sandy Landman. I'm with the Friends of the East Brunswick Environmental Commission, and we partner with the East Brunswick Library on these programs, which are part of our Option Green lecture series. And the Friends of the East Brunswick Environmental Commission, which we call Friends EBEC, is a nonprofit organization that's run entirely by volunteers. And you probably are familiar with some of our programs if you haven't been to any, if you haven't heard the name, but you've probably known about the community garden, which is out behind the municipal building. That's one of our projects. Has anyone been to the salamander protection program on Beekman Road in the winter on a rainy winter night? That's where we watch the salamanders and help them cross the road by closing it. The East Brunswick Police closed that road on warmish, rainy nights in late winter when the salamanders need to cross the road to get to their vernal pools on the other side where they lay their eggs. We also run the free cycling days. Has anyone ever gone to free cycling in East Brunswick? We've done it both, not virtually, but we've done curbside free cycling, and we've done it at the Community Arts Center as well as other locations. We do those in spring and fall. These Option Green programs, as I mentioned. We also have coming up one of our premier programs, National Moth Week. Has anybody heard of National Moth Week? That's a program that was started right here in East Brunswick in 2012, and it became international immediately. And to date, it has been observed in over 90 countries around the world on every continent other than the Antarctic. And we have 33 now, or 34 country coordinators who are all over the world. We're just adding 9 or 10 this year. So that's really exciting. So National Moth Week this year is July 23rd to 31st. We will be having a moth night here in East Brunswick, but we haven't got the location yet. It'll probably be the 23rd, which brings me to my next request, and that is go to our website, friendsebec.com, friendsebec.com, and click on the little link on the top on the right that says join. You can join our mailing list, and you will get emails about programs like this, about free cycling, about National Moth Week, etc., and salamander crossings. We try to get that out, or we post it on our website. That's really important that you sign up. And we don't sell email addresses, and we don't bombard you or anything. We really use it to communicate and let you know what we're doing. So tonight, I'm really happy to be able to introduce this program with Paul Mickiewicz. It's called Keeping Our Trees Beautiful. And he's someone that whose trucks you may have seen around town, because he does a lot of work on trees on our properties, homeowners' properties, and maybe some businesses as well. Paul has worked with trees for over 35 years. He's a state licensed tree expert, an ISA certified arborist, and an accredited organic landscape provider by the Northeastern Organic Farming Association. His training includes the soil food web method, composting, and insect pest management. You might have questions about that. He holds a degree in biology from Colgate University. His company, Mickiewicz Arbor Experts, has served New Jersey for over 30 years. So I'm happy to present Paul Mickiewicz. Thank you.
Raise my hand.
Yep, raise your hand.
I probably, yes.
And that should fun. So just speak up a little bit so they can hear.
Okay. Thank you, Sandy. I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for coming on this semi-jury day, and thank everybody for joining in. I got to apologize. You said trees, keeping trees beautiful, and I kind of morphed as I was going into this, and I really felt everything we do should be either keeping trees, they should be keeping them healthier, keeping them safer and helping them live longer. And if we're not doing that, then we should maybe question why we're actually doing what we're doing. I kind of have a little bit, I think it's a unique perspective of how I got here, and I think I want to explain a little bit, so I'm going to backtrack. As she said, I got a degree in biology, and I graduated, and I did not know what I wanted to do. So I started working for a pharmaceutical company, and I quickly learned that that was not something that I was going to spend the next 40 years doing. So luckily, by a chain of events, I started working for a tree company as a tree climber in South Plainfield. There was some people actually work, or parents have used it before. Niall Irwin, Armstrong, tree experts, and I learned a real lot from him. I was working outside. I always loved nature. I liked hard physical work, and I just kind of fell in love with it. Learned a real lot from him. He was also a tree expert. Taught us a real lot. Had a really good crew. We did a lot of, and he was really, his standards of work were really, really high. So I was really, really lucky to work for him. But as over time, I just realized I didn't want someone else dictating the direction of my life. So I started my own company, and we pretty much did everything. We did lawn cutting. We did landscape design. I learned about landscape design. And we did tree removals and pruning and other tree maintenance. It was a little bit of time as we grew, try to learn. That's kind of where I got where I wanted to learn everything I could about trees. Took whatever I could, whatever seminars, meetings, whatever I could read, whatever I had time for. And kind of we started to expand. I bought a sprayer at the time. And the gentleman who sold me the sprayer talked me into getting into organic based lawn care. And it was good at the time. I learned a lot. He did a lot of seminars and meetings, but I really wasn't happy with a lot of the products they were using because I didn't think they were very organic. And that's when I got involved with, it was actually at the time, Connecticut NOFA. And they had a program as organic, organic land care provider. It was a pretty substantial class and, testing and everything after that. And that's where I started to learn about soil biology and what really soil biology was. There's a number of people I learned from, Dr. Lane Ingham, who is kind of the soil food web, kind of the pioneer of all this. And trying to think, there was Chip Osborne Organics. There was a gentleman out in the Nature Lyceum, Jeff Franks, who was really instrumental in teaching me a lot. When I first started out, or even when I was in college, thinking about trees, I felt they were very simplistic. They were whether they put them in the ground, whether they lived, they died. It was pretty much chance, and it really wasn't. The tree didn't really have, I can't say choice, but it just was a real simplistic organism. And as I'm going on, I realize how complicated and complex they are. I mean, they can communicate between each other using chemicals, between their mycorrhizae. They can communicate within their individual. The leaves can communicate with the roots, what nutrients they need, and that can happen fairly quickly. They sense weaknesses in the tree and will put more in its canopy and will put more wood where it's needed. It recognizes if it has a wound and sends defense chemicals there. So it's a pretty complex, and I think in some ways they're maybe more complex than we are. Benefits. I think they're beautiful. They're beautiful to work with. I think they add a lot. They add a lot of property value. And I was talking to Sandy about her trees, and she has a lot of big trees on her property, and how she says she thinks she has the coolest house in the neighborhood because of the trees. So they definitely cool our properties, cool everything. They filter out pollutants. They filter out dust. They help mitigate storm damage, and there's a lot of information now about how the having trees and people around hospitals and stuff helps people heal faster. And there's just a lot of stuff going on with that. But I think the most important thing is photosynthesis. Back in high school, where you take where like see the tree and the leaves, it takes carbon dioxide and water, breaks those molecules and forms simple sugars, glucose, and releases oxygen. And without green plants, and trees are just big green plants, we would not be able to survive. We would run out of oxygen. It would eventually. So for me, that's always been I kind of enjoy breathing. So go to what the most, okay, sorry, most important part of the tree. And I think this isn't the part that most people think about. What's the most neglected part of the tree? I think it's the root system. You know, you don't see it, it's out of sight, out of mind. Let's see. A lot of people think trees growing in our urban landscapes, it's kind of utopia. It's kind of an easy place for them to grow. And I think it's actually a really harsh environment. And to kind of explain why it's a harsh environment, I think I got to go back to what happens in a forest where trees evolved over a couple 100 million years. You know, when the leaves fall, the branches fall, the whole trees fall. It's there's decomposers. If I'm going to have to go into a little bit about soil biology, there's a couple of real important aspects. There's bacteria which are really small, and they decompose or eat or digest real simple compounds, simple sugars, and they also secrete a lot of glues because they're so small they get washed away. So they're all kind of they glue these little particles and they're breaking down these simple compounds. And they start forming small aggregates. Now there's the fungi, the other decomposers. They're a little bit more complex. They're a lot more efficient with carbon. So when they break stuff down, the carbon, it doesn't go off back into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. It's sequestered back into the fungi and back into the soil. And they're a little bit more responsible for decomposing more complex molecules. And what that does is that they naturally recycle all the nutrients from the trees. Because I mean, over the hundreds of millions of years, there's nobody taking care and fertilizing these trees. They all had to do it. They had to be really efficient with all their molecules. And now there's the other part of it is the predators, because they gotta have the things that eat those bacteria and fungi. There's nematodes, and a lot of times people think of nematodes, they're all bad. They're root-feeding nematodes. Only a really small portion of nematodes are bad. A lot of them are good. They feed on bacteria, they feed on fungi, and they help release the nutrients back in a form that the tree wants. There's protozoa, which also do the same thing, and there's microarthropods. So you kind of have, the other thing about the fungi is they're long filamentous type organisms. And so you have these little micro aggregates. Now you've got the fungi will kind of form these little micro aggregates into bigger aggregates. So when you have let's see here, when you look at healthy soil, only 45 should be your sand, silt, and clay. You got 5% organic matter. The remaining 50% should be spaces for air and water. So that's, I mean, it's a very porous in a soil. It's very porous. Moisture can come, it can penetrate into the soil. The roots can grow deep. Oxygen can get into the soil, and because you have the organic matter in the soil, it'll hold that moisture for the trees. So if we go now to there's the benefits of the mycorrhizae. So they release the nutrients in a form that the tree wants. They build structure. They actually build a lot of, they form protective layers around the root system that other predators can't get. Sequester carbon in the form of that humus, that brown, that black stuff that you usually see in the soil. It gets you really, really dirty, and it's a little bit on the slimy side. That's humus, and that's carbon, and it increases the water holding capacity. There's actually a fungi, multi-branched, you can see. And actually, probably, if you want to see what a bacteria looks like, that's probably a bacteria there. It's a little bit out of focus because it's focused on the fungi. But the fungi are very, very long. They can be extremely long. And they have a big part in, as you go from successional stages, from, say, a highly disturbed field to maybe the forests of the Pacific Northwest. You start out with basically bacteria, because bacteria, they can reproduce really fast. They release the form of nitrogen that they release is nitrate, which weeds like, and it grows really fast. But as you go to maybe to a lawn, it's going to be the biomass. It's going to be roughly 50%. As you go to a forest, maybe a deciduous forest, it might be 1,000 times fungal than bacterial. And if you go to the Pacific Northwest, it might be 1,000 times. So the fungi really have a big to do with creating fertility in any type of system, even a garden system. Our urban landscapes, just the building process in general, it's compaction. You got you're digging the foundation, you got bulldozers, you got backhoes, you got trucks, everything gets compacted. Limited natural recycling. So when the leaves fall, everything falls, what do? I mean, which we kind of have to, we pick them up and remove them. So now you're not giving that food to that biology. So the soil can't heal itself. Competition from turf. People think, and I've had a lot of customers, they say I want my property to look like a park where the lawn goes right up. I want it right up to the trees. It's an unnatural situation. It's at different ends of succession. Lawns are very early. Trees are later. Also, turf. The root systems of grass is it's very fibrous, and it basically it's able to outcompete a lot of things going down into the soil from the trees. There's also some research that shows that, and they're not sure exactly why, but it actually, the tree roots underneath turf will be inhibited. It inhibits the root growth of them. Like I said, and also they want their nitrogen in different forms, which is really important. Overuse of synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. I think we should try to use organic fertilizers whenever we can, because it feeds the soil first, then it releases the nutrients, where synthetic, and it also has a high salt content, so it has a detrimental effect on the soil biology. The pesticides, the insecticides, herbicides, it all has, I mean, sometimes you have to use them, and I understand that, but it's the overuse, and do it just as a doing it because maybe it has a detrimental effect on the soil biology. Also, the way we prune our trees, we have a tendency of pruning too much, pruning improperly, mulching improperly, planting improperly. We cut the roots, which sometimes we have to, because we have to run our services to the house. So the roots sometimes have to be cut. We cover it, but it's just a really, really stressful place for trees to grow.
What constitutes improper mulching?
I'm going to get to that in a little bit. So with all this, what can we do? And this is kind of where some of the things we can. It's kind of reducing stress, doing as many things right as we can, and eliminating as many things bad as we can. First of all, there's kind of a pretty good, the bottom right there. That's what a root flare. On all your trees, all trees have root flares. You should see them. Some are going to be bigger. They might not be as big as that, but that's where the tree transitions from the trunk of the tree into the root system. So you'll see that swelling. You should always see that swelling. And the reason being, the bark on the trunk of the tree evolved to dry out. The bark on the roots of the trees evolved, it could stay wet all the time. So if the bark on the trunk of the tree is wet all the time, it gets soft, it gets a really good entranceway for insects and disease. Other thing that you want to look for if you don't see, now the one on the top right, if you probably would have looked at that, that would look like it was going down and like it's kind of like if you're looking and you're seeing a telephone pole going into the ground, it's a problem. So it's either one, the grade was changed, or girdling roots will also cause that. And that's what roots that should be going, they should be going out. And instead they start going across and eventually that'll start getting into the Cambrian and cause decline, cause death, cause premature failure. The baskets. I have arguments with landscapers all the time and say, even the nurseries, and say we should leave it on. That's what happens when you leave it on. You got to take the baskets off. That's in the lower bottom. You can see it's actually girdled inside the tree. This is something you can do. There's actually a company doing with an air spade, but you can get in there and remove. You can do it yourself. You know, a little bit of get on your hands and knees. Maybe a trowel, a stiff brush, and you can pull that away. If you see those roots that are growing on top, you can cut them, and it's something that you can do. Something you can do yourself, and it's probably the first thing you should look for when you go home. Okay.
Upper right hand corner. Why does that happen? Is it because maybe you have the lawn area too close to the tree?
It's number one. That tree was planted too deep because I'll go over. You should see the flare. So that it was either planted too deep, or the grade was changed, and now the roots kind of they're used to growing at this level, and now you put and now they're going to sense it because the roots need oxygen, and that's when you have to. So they're going to grow back up, and then they start growing. They can start going around. Sometimes it happens when you have when you actually harvest a tree. You got to cut the roots. There may be a root that goes sideways. So even if you do a planting, you probably want to check. You should always see that root. That's why you always want to see that. If you're not seeing that, you definitely want to look and see why you're not seeing it, whether it's planted too deep or you have girdling roots. That make sense? Tree planting. Couple things, and this is where I'm going to get a lot of hate mail from this, but it's okay. If you have a container, what will usually happen? Usually, it's not planted in a container one time. Usually, they start them in smaller containers, and every time they transplant them, and every time into bigger and bigger containers, and every time they do that, it's a little bit too deep. So by the time you get to maybe a larger container plant, it may be this far. 3, 4, 6 inches too deep, so you already have a problem. The other thing is even and I think the rule of thumb, they'll tell you plant a tree at the level that it was growing in a nursery. But if you have, so I disassemble the ball, take the burlap off. Number one, there's probably that wire basket's on there, so you got to take, and you can do it. You got to do it carefully. Take the wire basket off. For a lot of the burlap, because what they would do is they would dig a tree maybe in the spring, and the old burlap they would put it, when they would have it sitting in a nursery, and by the fall the burlap would fall apart and they'd have an issue. So now they're using a lot of the burlap that's already treated. So now you have something that's treated, that's wrapped around things. So I say take that burlap off, but then you'll also find out where, this kind of has the burlap on here, but you can see you don't want to expose that root flare again. And you'd be surprised how many times you take a root ball apart and that there's maybe 6 inches of topsoil or dirt on top of where they're digging. A lot of times they do it when they excavate it, it's pushed up under the tree. And when they go to dig the tree, they never pull that back. And so that's why you always want to take that off. Usually want the hole to be at least twice as wide as the ball. And I would kind of, if you kind of see this is the end of this thing is a little bit more perpendicular. I'd rather see it like this. So when the roots start to grow out, it get out of the, like it's just gonna, you know, you got this really nice, this hole that's really good and the roots go out and it hits it and it starts, and it's the side, it's like, oh, it's been really easy. I'm not gonna go out here. I'm just gonna stay in here. And that's where another reason why you get those the girdling roots. And there's mulching, which is a little bit, and you can kind of see it doesn't come up, it doesn't cover the trunk of the tree, it just goes out on the end. A little bit more about mulching, and I think in one of the other slides. There we go. Volcano mulching. Everybody see that? Just anyway, so yeah, just keep it off the trunk of the tree, and it should even, like I said, even when you're mulching, that root flare, which I don't know, but the root flare, you should see that root flare. And I wish it was a nicer day. We could have went outside. We could actually kind of see where it is. And sometimes you really have to just see it. 2 to 3 inches of mulch. I think wood chips are really good. They're free because any tree company doesn't know what to do with them. But if you can kind of build a relationship with a tree company or know somebody, and they'll even like, I'll have people that'll ask me, if I don't have clean chips right now. I have a lot of kind of shredded stuff, but then if I have a lot of good stuff, and it just allows, I think it allows moisture to get through and air to get through. But if you're going to use mulch, which is fine, I stay away from the dyed mulches. There's hate mail number 2. Why? Did you ever see the black, red, and brown mulch? Is that natural? It's just, I don't know. Here I'm being maybe it's being subjective, but it's really ugly. Sorry. Yes.
I saw a woman, she was using some kind of mulch product that had rubber in it. You heard that?
Yeah, that was actually for playgrounds, for like if you have a swing set.
What's the
And-
ecological impact of green rubber mulch?
I'm going to take a guess. Not good. There's a lot of chemicals in rubber that will probably leachate out. And another reason why we mulch is we're trying to simulate what's going on back in that forest. So I want that mulch to break down. And and I've had customers like, well, I got to put mulch down every year. It just keeps it keeps breaking down. It's like, well, yeah, that's good because you got that biology. So you're starting to get that natural process. And that's one of the other reasons why the dyed mulch. And I did this because we were working at my daughter's house, and I did not want to do black mulch because again, for reasons what I told. But her husband was really, really adamant, so we put it down. And what I found was after the second year, it wasn't decomposing. And you really want that. So what I'm thinking in that dyed mulch, what is in there that's affecting that soil biology? Again, so everything is soil biology. We want to get as much benefit from that as we can. Now we're putting something that's maybe it's going to be detrimental to that. So that's another reason why. Yes?
Is compost good?
Yes. Yeah, I think it's an excellent. I love compost. We do a lot of work with that. I'm always kind of testing, and it's great as a top dress for your lawn in your shrubs. But you want to be careful where you're. It's like anything else. There's something that's really good, and somebody will figure out a way to make more money off of it, make it cheap, and then all of a sudden you have something that's doesn't resemble the thing that was even really good. But yeah, I think compost is excellent. We talked about competition with the turf. So, another thing we can do is increase the bed size. How far to what you feel but just make it wider. I mean, here's some really nice pictures of landscape. I wish I could say I had something to do with these, but these were taken off the internet. But it's really attractive. And there's a couple things about these. This is really super maintenance. At the end of the year, what you can do, you just, and when everything dies off, you cut them down. You let them stay on the just let them fall. They'll start to decompose back into the soil, start feeding the soil. And then maybe when the leaves come down, you got the landscaper, he can mulch up the leaves a couple times. You blow that back over, it'll be fine. And that stuff will come back up and you really won't have to mulch. Or maybe if you have to mulch as these get bigger, just, you got to mulch a little bit less there. So I'm cheap and lazy. I mean, to be honest with you. And so if I can find something that'll save me labor and maybe save me money, I'm going to do it. But yeah, I just think there's a lot of, I think we have to change the way we look at design and a lot of the sterile landscapes that we have. And the other thing, a lot of this is stuff with natural native pollinators, because it feeds that whole, you got to look at I think their landscape is a whole ecosystem. So what's to feed other things and have a whole ecosystem is I think it's all good. This is just a little bit because I see a lot of people where the branch should be cut. It's always different on a tree. This is kind of exaggerated, but usually right at the thing, it's what they call a branch bark ridge. It's usually at the base. And there's usually a swelling here at the bottom. This is all part of the trunk, and you don't want to cut this. So you basically want to cut just on the outside. They call it natural target pruning, and that's a really good way. If you're hiring an arborist or somebody to come out and do pruning, you can ask them about this and ask them where they're going to be cutting. What's natural target pruning? And so they kind of demonstrate that they know what they're doing. And sometimes you miss sometimes, but instead of leaving these, and I see a lot of times where you have these, these big flush cuts and these big wounds, and they don't callus over really good. They don't heal. Actually, trees don't heal like base partition, and you start getting, you get decay, you get, decays in the trunk and everything. The other thing is I want to say about pruning is probably sometimes less is more. Those leaves are really important because it's again photosynthesis. It's building sugars. It's building. It's their whole energy process. So the more leaves they have, the more surface area they have, the more energy that the tree is going to have for defenses growing. So you want to. I mean, you have to prune, but you want to prune sometimes less. Like I see a lot of trees that are in lawn areas that are just elevated way too high. It's a couple problems with that. It puts the center of gravity higher up in a tree, so the wind blows, it's more likely to get branch breakage up in the canopy, and it just puts a lot of stress on a tree. As your younger trees can be pruned, like percentage-wise, more. It's kind of like when we were young. If you think back what I did when I was 20s, now it would kill me. And I think it's the same with trees. You get big mature trees, you probably don't want to take any live material out, just probably dead wood. So kind of just think of it as, I guess it's an energy system. Some things that you can do to kind of feed the soil, and we talked about mulch, increasing reducing the competition with the turf, increasing the bed size. Quality compost, which you asked me about, I think is an excellent way. You can mix it in with your beds. And there's some compost that you can actually look fine, but there's some that's more designed, it's more fungal. So it's something that you'd want to put more around your planting beds and trees, and there's stuff that maybe has a more balance, but it's really hard because the fungi to getting established in the soil, it just takes a long time because they don't grow and reproduce as fast. But they'll usually test. Sometimes which I have a hard time in this area, but wherever you kind of look around, and it's kind of like buyer beware. You just kind of ask them questions about it. And a lot of times that I talked about Dr. Elaine Ingham, she does a lot of testing with her lab does testing with compost, and it'll give you the percentage of bacteria and fungi in that. These are basically all these, the granular humates, yucca and kelp extracts, fish hydrolysates. I can read it. I don't have to pronounce it because I got to foul it up. They're all, again, most of those are fungal foods. You can get product. There's, if you kind of Google it, this is stuff you can do yourself. You can split it with a spreader. Yucca and the kelp, probably you want to do figure out some way of doing it with a sprayer, and they have a lot of those bigger sprayers. The same thing with the fish. But that all just helps, it just helps feed that soil biology, what we're trying to do. Recycling plant material when and where we can. I'll start with the lawn. Which would start, I mean, how many, I'm sorry.
Do coffee grinds help at all with anything?
It's funny, I'm working with a company doing composting, and we're trying to set up systems and trying to get the recipe right. And that was the one that I've never heard before. And he said coffee grinds, it's high in nitrogen, and that they're really good for compost. So I would imagine if it's good for compost, because you're feeding that biology, I would think it would be good for this. Yeah, it'd be good for the soil.
Yeah.
But-
what I've read, it's considered the green part of the compost, even though it's brown.
Well, I don't have compost, but I was getting rid of my coffee grinds a few years ago. And just throwing in the root area of certain plants, and I noticed that one of the shrubs, I guess it's like a low conifer type of shrub.
Okay.
We're starting to lose branches, like half of it. It's just, I don't know if it was because of that. Well, I expected that. maybe that was-
I don't know for sure. I do know it's like you said, green. It's a nitrogen source.
So in
It doesn't
general-
have.
In general, it's okay.
I would think it would be fine. I don't know.
Is the pH?
I don't know about if we're putting it if we're mixing it in a compost as a nitrogen source, it's going to be in there for a while. So you're going to have that biology is going to, and that's what's really great about biology. There's so many different things, but that biology is going to kind of buffer maybe if there might be acid. I don't know what's in there because I really don't know. You may want to let it sit a while somehow, maybe to let it compost, or I don't to put it under that. It's a little bit different, and I can't give you. Yeah, I would think. Like I said, it's another source of nitrogen, and basically all plants need nitrogen. I don't know what form of nitrogen it is, and you might know.
I don't know, I'm just a beginning compost.
Okay.
I think you can rip up newspaper.
That'll be, yeah, you got to have, one of the things with compost is you really want to you got to get temperature up. So you need something that's usually nitrogen, usually, grass clippings, green produce, the coffee grounds, which I've heard, they said for the beer waste and anything like that is a nitrogen. So you got to have a certain balance because that kind of gets the temperature up to it's got to be, I can't remember what it is off my head, but it's like 170 degrees for so many days because it'll kill pathogens that are in there. It'll also destroy the weed seeds because you don't want to have you don't have compost and you're putting it out in your garden and then you have a bloom of weeds. Anyway, back to the lawns. And overall, what I see, if they're all cut too short, I would say cut it at 3 inches minimum. And I think if you can push that, I have an accountant who is, I love him to death. He's great. He's maybe lazier than I am. So he will not, and I'll go over to his house and it's like, there's no weeds, it's a little bit too, like a little bit on the long side, but he has no problems like that. And I was like, what do you do? I don't do anything. I just like cut the grass once in a while. So raising the grass, and what also it does, it gives you you're increasing the surface area. So you get, again, photosynthesis, again, more energy. You get more energy for root growth. You get more energy for defenses. And recycle, and people say, well, yeah, it doesn't form thatch. I don't know. That was something that's from, it just doesn't. There's a lot of inorganic fertilizers will cause thatch, but really it doesn't. So cutting the grass higher and recycling, that's a really good thing. And leaves. I'm going to say recycle leaves on your lawn and into your beds whenever you can. Again, you got to use common sense. If you got maple leaves seem to get, when they get wet, they get very, very clumpy. And I have a maple tree in my backyard and I can't do it. But the oak, I can have quite a bit of leaves and I can run over it a couple times and it'll go into the grass. If I get a real lot, I can blow it into the bed. But again, it's a little bit more, you're probably more fungal food and you're probably helping like I said, bacteria are real easy. They grow really, they're not the ones that are hard to grow. It's the fungi. So recycling that, I think, is all. Yep.
You're supposed to leave the grass until things off the lawn.
Yes.
Okay. And did you say you have to kind of, we got a moment service, so I would have to ask the guys, they're supposed to go over the leaves and so they fresh up?
I mean, you got to have it's kind of like you have what they want to do, and it's maybe you can kind of talk, I don't know if I'm cutting. I mean, we used to do it years ago. I don't do it anymore. But if I'm cutting grass and I got to take away leaves, and someone tells me I can just mulch, run over it twice with the mulch, these mowers now are so powerful, and mulch them, I would be, I would be up for that. But again, it's common. You got to be careful because if too much, and it's like, well, Mrs. Jones told me I could leave the leaves here, and now I got 6 inches of leaves on there. It's all matted up, it's rain, it's wet, and now you have this clumpy mess, and it causes, it's common sense. But yeah, you can leave the grass clippings on, and it seems like I've been doing it for mine for, so I'll cut the grass. By the next morning, they're gone. I don't even see them. To get that biology going. This is a little bit, I'm just going to get this on your radar. Anybody here at Biochar? It's something to really look at, especially if you're gardening. And this whole thing with kind of what my approach is, trying to get carbon sequestered back into the soil, back into the trees, and in a form of humic acids, humates, just that humus stuff. But eventually, so it may last in the soil for tens of years. Where biochar, it's what you do. It's really anything that was alive. You can any type. You can do wood. It's heated with high heat, so it blows off basically everything else, all the volatiles, and what's basically is left is just carbon. But it's got a lot of pores in it. And it's amazing because it'll help it helps the soil biology, it helps hold nutrients. And there's a lot of stuff with farmers. We're kind of working with it now, but just from hearing what farmers are doing it, how that they're increasing production like 50%. But it needs to be, again, you got to look into this because some of it isn't done very sustainable, and it also needs to be charged because there's a lot of space. It's called cation exchange, but there's a lot of spaces or charging sites for nutrients and even water. And if you put it in, and I've heard stories that people put it in their garden and it sucked up all the nutrients in their garden, looked like, and it took like 2 or 3 years to come back, and then it was really good. So you don't want to make that mistake. That's the only thing, but it's something to look into. There's a lot of information on it. And I just think, like I said, now, and the other thing is you're sequestering carbon for thousands of years. I mean, it's a very, really, really stable. It doesn't break down. And the only really way to further break it down, it's similar to charcoal, but I think the properties are a little bit different, and you can still burn it. But I think it's something to look at to help with our climate. So, Sandy asked me about, this is our little friend. That's a spotted lanternfly. She was asking me about that, and I said, we use it. There's a lot I don't know. This is something that it came from Pennsylvania. I don't know where it came. Well, originally came from China. It blew across Pennsylvania like crazy, and it came into. I saw it 3 years ago. I saw a couple, and I was all excited. It's like, oh, I saw a spotted lanternfly. Oh, I can't wait. Next year it was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna. This year they're all over the place. They're right now they're really small. They're probably they look like people see them. They think they're little black spiders, but there's a lot of them. They used to be on the ailanthus tree, but I'm seeing in the maple trees. This year I'm seeing them on roses. I'm seeing on peonies. I've seen them a lot on river birch. I don't know, you know. I don't know. Like we're go ahead.
I happened to look up some stuff today because we're in a environmental commission in our town. And we posted some stuff about this just today on our Facebook page. I was telling people just diluted dish soap, spray it on, it kills them right away. But then I was looking at my sheet from last year, and it might be a little more complicated than that. Some detergents that you put kill plants. So I wish I could send it to you.
It's I've been looking, and we actually use a product called Xylam. It's actually labeled for them, and the reason we do it, it's a lot labor intensive. You spray it on, you use another product called Embark, and you spray it on the trunk of the tree, and it's translocated up into the canopy. The product is most of the cost involved to the customer is product because it doesn't really take that long. But I don't know how we did somebody's property, and they still said they have they have the nymphs on them. I think you can control them. And I don't know. I think the bigger problem with them is they feed. They're when they start, like I said, these are really small. This is the bigger one. Here they're probably about a ½ inch, and they have this sucking mouth part that they put into the trunk, into the bark of the tree, and they're really voracious feeders, but there's a lot of sugar in the sap of the tree, and they can't use all that sap, so they excrete it, and that's where the problem. It seems like the bigger problem is. So you have this. It's called sooty mold. You get this. If you look on the leaves underneath, it'll all be shiny, and then black mold grows on it. Where we park our trucks in Sayreville, we have an ailanthus tree in the back. And there was a pallet that was laying there, and I'm looking, and the pallet was black. Like, who was spray painting something here? And I'm looking at it, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I finally looked up, and there's spotted lanternflies all over the place. I think that may be. I think it's more. I'm hoping that it's more of that nuisance that if you have it if you have a tree in a maybe by your deck, over your deck, over your furniture, over your car, that's going to be the bigger issue. I know it's a problem for some of the for the grape growers and some of the farmers and stuff like that. But because they can't. That xylem is pretty. You don't want to spray it on something that you're going to be eating the fruit from. And I don't even like using those type of chemicals. I do a lot of stuff organically, whenever I can. But I'm not an idealist. I don't think being ideal in politics, religion, and the environment sometimes doesn't work out really, really well. And I hear some of this from the state, and it's like, well, if you see him, smash him. I'm like, if you've seen him, anybody tried smashing? It's an exercise of futility. It's like this woman's like, well, they told me, and I got it, and I'm chasing them around. It's like, forget it. It's just, and there's thousands of them. It's amazing. And I have no idea how bad it's going to get. So just keep an eye on that. I don't know.
Kill a lot of stuff.
Okay, you had them on your tree last year, and your tree doesn't seem to be doing good this year, is it
What kind of tree?
dogwood?
I see. I haven't seen them on dogwoods.
They were all over ours last year.
See, I'm thinking of. I don't know what they're. I'll be honest, I'm just confused. The more I read, the more confused I get, because it's like, well, it could be these, but it's only that, and now I'm seeing it on this. And yeah, if it's on your dogwood 2 years in a row, that's a smaller tree, and if it's really loaded on it, it's probably, I think, a concern. I'm trying to think what you can do. I mean, how big is your dogwood?
Fairly large, like 20 foot, it's like tall, older.
You may be able to do some sort of a, even with the hose, you know, if they have the hoses, some of those will, you know, the little sprayers attached to the hose. I mean, they're not hard to kill, but it seems like it's like an army, you know, it's like, okay, well, we control these, and even under the trees that we were doing, you know, we had these piles of spotted lanternflies, and then look up and it's like, just still there. It's like, where do you get, you know, I don't know. And so keep our fingers crossed. I don't know. This may be the reason for me to get out of my career. Here's the ailanthus tree. That's actually also it's an invasive species. I was kind of like, well, if they destroy the ailanthus tree, I'm kind of happy because it's not really a high value tree. It's got, you know, so, but now they're going to everything else.
They're cutting some of those down. That's a building. That's the tree of heaven.
Yeah, why in God's name do they call this tree the tree of heaven? Nobody else wants it. Yeah, but anyway, it's again subjective, in my opinion. Yeah, I guess they are. I don't know, but they're all over. I kind of, oh boy, I get political, but it's somebody making money in states, so they got to kind of justify what they're doing, and it's just like they're quarantining and stuff. They get on the cars, they get on everywhere.
PC Richards. I mean, go figure. Why are they on a retail, you know, store?
They know something we don't know. I don't know. Yeah, so that's basically my information. If you got any questions or give me a call. What I will say, that's my cell. That's probably my cell phone is the best. Leave a message. And even if I call you back, you call me back, and if it's something, just always leave a message because I won't recognize the phone number. So, yep.
I have a question.
Yes.
From someone on Zoom. They say that they have a tree that has a V shape about 6 feet up in the trunk, and over time it is now splitting. Is there a way they can save it?
How, if it's splitting, it's a little bit concerned. You can put cables in it, and you can put a brace rod in it. If it's not too bad, I would look at what the targets are. You know, if it's something, if a tree's going to split and it's going to fall in the middle of the yard, it's probably not a big thing. But if it falls on Mrs. Jones's new rose garden, or the kids, it's again common sense. You can do something if it's not too bad. Thank you.